Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer Guion Archer. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Admiral Stephen Kohler, Commander, United States Pacific Fleet, and Mrs. Gina Kohler, accompanied by Vice Admiral Mark Hammond, Chief of Navy, and Mrs. Jodie Hammond and their accompanying delegation. We also warmly welcome Mr. Joe Slats, representing the Naval Association of Australia. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services Club of Australia and the RSL and Services League. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Illawong Public School visiting from Illawong, New South Wales. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Please be seated if able. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Stoker Daniel Joseph Beer. Daniel Beer was born in Toowoomba, Queensland on the 24th of December 1919, the son of David and Mary Beer. He grew up in Toowoomba. His mother died in 1934, by which stage Daniel and his brothers and sisters were old enough to look after themselves and their father. Daniel Beer enlisted in the Royal Australian Navy on the 11th of January 1938 and began training at HMAS Cerberus, the primary training establishment for RAN personnel. Rated Stoker and hence specialising in engine room duties, in the period leading up to the Second World War, he joined HMAS Canberra, a 10,000-tonne county-class heavy cruiser and flagship of the Australian Squadron. With the declaration of war, Beer was again under training at Cerberus as the RAN readied for conflict. On the 17th of June 1940, Stoker Beer posted to HMAS Parramatta, a Grimsby-class sloop laid down at Cockatoo Island Dockyard in Sydney in November 1938 and commissioned in early April 1940. By the end of June 1940, Parramatta had sailed from Fremantle to the Red Sea, where she reported for duty. Apart from a visit to Bombay in December 1940, Parramatta spent the next 9 months escorting, patrolling and minesweeping in this area of conflict. After taking part in British operations against Italian Eritrea in May 1941, Parramatta transferred to the control of the Commander-in-Chief Mediterranean Station, beginning with 3 weeks based in Port Tewfik at the head of the Gulf of Suez. Soon afterwards, Parramatta was assigned to escort duty in support of the campaign in Libya. Parramatta sailed for Tobruk on the 22nd of June 1941 in company of the sloop HMAS Auckland and escorting the steamer Pass of Balmaha, which was carrying a cargo of badly needed petrol. The warships were to leave Pass of Balmaha off Tobruk, waiting to seaward while she discharged her cargo and then escorted her back to Alexandria. For 36 hours, there was no sign of the enemy. On the second day out, a reconnaissance plane was sighted to the west. Half an hour later, the first of 3 attacks began. Later that afternoon, Parramatta sighted 3 formations of dive bombers manoeuvring to attack. Auckland was hit in the stern and disappeared from view in a cloud of thick brown smoke. She emerged out of control, guns still firing and heading straight for Parramatta, who had to swing away to avoid a collision. While Parramatta and the petrol carrier escaped damage, Auckland began to abandon ship. She was barely cleared when a heavy explosion lifted the stricken ship slowly and steadily about 6 or 7 feet into the air before she rolled over and sank. When the enemy returned, machine gunning Auckland survivors in boats, skiffs and rafts, some still afloat in their lifebelts, Parramatta was forced to withdraw until darkness fell. As the light faded, Parramatta was joined by the Australian destroyers HMAS Waterhen and Vendetta. While the destroyers circled, Parramatta picked up survivors before shaping course for Alexandria. After cleaning ship and making good minor damage, Parramatta soon resumed escort duties between Alexandria and Tobruk. On the 25th of November 1941, Parramatta and the destroyer HMAS Avonvale sailed from Alexandria, escorting the deeply laden ammunition ship Han to Tobruk. About midnight the following night, the 3 ships were north of Bardia off the Libyan coast. The night was black, it was raining and there was a heavy sea running. Han was confused as to her route into Tobruk, so Parramatta closed to hail by megaphone. Half an hour later, the 2 ships lay close alongside one another, steaming slowly towards the harbour. At 12 minutes past midnight, a German U-boat fired a spread of 3 torpedoes. All 3 torpedoes missed. Disappointed and puzzled by his failure, the German submarine closed and re-engaged. A torpedo hit Parramatta midships and there were 2 almost simultaneous explosions. Parramatta was torn apart. All lighting failed and the commanding officer, Commander Walker, had time only to issue the order to abandon ship before she rolled rapidly to starboard and sank. Only those on deck had any chance to escape. About 30 men clung to an aeropressor minesweeping float among the mass of debris. They could hear shouts close by in the darkness. 2 seamen decided to take a chance and swim for safety. After almost 3 hours in the water and near exhaustion, they were picked up by Avonvale, which had by then plucked 19 survivors from the wreckage strewn over the sea. No others were found, and although she searched a wide area, the destroyer could find no trace of the Oropesa float nor its human cargo. 3 more survivors reached the Libyan coast unaided and were rescued by advancing British troops. 138 men lost their lives, including Stoker Daniel Beer, who was 21 years old. With no grave but the sea, today those men are commemorated at the Plymouth Naval Memorial alongside over 23,000 casualties of the First and Second World Wars. Daniel Beer's name is listed on the honour roll on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Stoker Daniel Joseph Beer, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as those who have remained grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.